All right, let's jump right into this explainer. If you're navigating the digital asset space right now, constantly checking charts and tokenomics, you might be wondering, what on earth does the Vatican have to do with my crypto portfolio? Well, as it turns out, a whole lot. We're looking at a brand new, highly comprehensive moral framework from Pope Leo XIV that literally challenges how we build, how we fund, and how we actually use digital infrastructure. We're skipping the pleasantries today because we need to address this heavy warning directed squarely at unregulated finance and the broader crypto space. This comes straight out of paragraph 160 of the Pope's new encyclical Magnifica Humanitas. And listen, he is not mincing words here. He's pointing out that when financial innovation is stripped of its moral foundation, it doesn't just hurt a few people on the margins, it has the actual demonstrated capacity to trigger a global systemic meltdown. So this brings us to the ultimate question for your own bags, and really for our entire industry. Which of these two metaphorical cities are your investments actually funding? See, the Pope uses these two really powerful biblical images, the Tower of Babel and the rebuilding of Jerusalem, as a lens. It's the core framework he uses to ask us where our capital and our developer brainpower are truly going. In this groundbreaking theological document, the Pope translates some incredibly deep ethical concerns into what is essentially a moral audit for today's tech and finance investors. The document is called Magnifica Humanitas, which translates to magnificent humanity, and clocking in at over 42,000 words, it is a massive deep dive into AI, digital economies, and human dignity. This isn't just some abstract philosophical musings, you guys. It's almost like a secret framework that Silicon Valley and the DeFi space have been completely ignoring, and it's challenging us to seriously reevaluate what we're actually building. He frames this entire choice through a really stark contrast. On one side, you have the deeply dehumanizing path of the Tower of Babel. The encyclical describes this as the idolatry of profit, where totally unregulated systems basically sacrifice the weak just in the name of efficiency. Then, on the flip side, you have the rebuilding of Jerusalem, and this represents finance that actually serves the real economy. It's a system built on shared responsibility and the absolute protection of human dignity.
Let's get into Section 1, the Babel syndrome, and why crypto is in the crosshairs.
Okay, so let's unpack this Babel syndrome and understand the very specific warnings the Vatican has issued regarding the absolute worst parts of our industry. The core issue here is what the Pope calls finance for its own sake. This is what happens when capital generation completely detaches from human labor and the real economy. Instead of a financial system acting as a bridge to fund businesses or create jobs, we end up with these closed speculative loops. It's literally just capital chasing capital, yield farming for the sake of yield farming, while the actual tangible needs of human beings are just left completely on the sidelines. And this brilliantly illustrates the exact dangers the Vatican sees playing out in the opaque, hyper-fast world of digital assets. I mean, we aren't just talking about abstract theology here. The encyclical explicitly warns about extreme wealth concentration and passive capital replacing actual human labor. Even heavier than not, Vatican officials have previously voiced grave alarm at the UN about how unregulated blockchains are actively facilitating some truly heinous illicit trades, like human smuggling. These are the catastrophic, real-world consequences of finance for its own sake. The absolute crucial point to grasp here is that unless we prioritize fairness at the very foundational design stage, our tech will inevitably hardcode structural inequality. If a decentralized protocol is designed strictly for maximum yield with zero oversight, well, it's going to naturally exclude the vulnerable and enrich the few. The Pope is practically begging developers and investors to realize that code is not morally neutral. The values we embed into the architecture today are absolutely going to dictate the societal structures of tomorrow. Moving on to Section 2, the theological pivot. Capital versus human dignity. Now, it's super important to note that this encyclical isn't just some curse on technology. It's a theological pivot. It's a reminder that we are the builders, and we have a choice. Drawing on the Renaissance philosopher Pico della Mirandola, we're reminded that as investors, we have the unique free will to elevate society rather than degrade it. Because unlike machines that are just bound by algorithms, humans have this incredible capacity for self-transformation. When we use our intellect to build systems for human flourishing, we ascend. But if we just blindly chase automated yields, we vegetate. Let's see how this creates a really high-contrast choice for crypto. Are we just prioritizing passive income from capital? Because the encyclical warns that this leads straight to wealth hoarding and isolation. Or are we fueling income from labor that actually dignifies people? Catholic social teaching insists that work is essential to human dignity. If our digital economies are only set up to reward the whales who already hold the most tokens, we're actively eroding the fabric of society.
Which brings us to Section 3, Rebuilding the Real Economy, and the Jerusalem Vision.
So, what does the Pope's positive, hopeful vision of rebuilding Jerusalem actually look like for us? The Vatican envisions a future where digital infrastructure is treated as a common good that truly serves humanity and protects the vulnerable. Departments like the Dicastery for Promoting Integral Human Development, which is basically a Vatican ministry, are actively advocating for this. The goal isn't to shut down the blockchain, not at all. The goal is to orient it so its transparency and efficiency actually solve real human problems instead of making them worse.
So in practice, this means shifting our focus entirely. We need to look for investments that fund real-world jobs, build inclusive financial infrastructure, and actively respect our shared environment. A magnificent humanity in the crypto space would look like decentralized networks finally providing equitable banking to the unbanked, supply chain tokens ensuring fair labor practices, and consensus mechanisms that don't just recklessly burn through our planet's energy resources.
All right, Section 4, the investor's ethical mandate. Let's look at the requirements of adoption. How do we actually apply this to our own wallets? It's so easy to get lost in white papers and tokenomics, so here is a practical audit using those Catholic social teaching concepts. First step, the common good. Does the protocol actually benefit the many, or does it just enrich a select few insiders? Second, solidarity. Are we protecting future generations and the environment? Third, the universal destination of goods. Is this digital infrastructure equitably accessible to everyone? And finally, subsidiarity. Are the algorithms and the tokenomics actively preventing structural inequality? If you take one thing away from this explainer, it should be this profound mandate to disarm finance from its ruthless arms race mentality. In crypto, this means stepping away from that hyper-competitive zero-sum PvP game where someone literally has to get wrecked for you to win. It means ensuring that technology and our pursuit of financial innovation always remains subordinate to human dignity. I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to evaluate your own portfolio today. If efficiency and profit are your only metrics, what human elements are you sacrificing to achieve them? Are we just building a digital Tower of Babel that's eventually going to crumble under its own weight? Or are we laying the foundation for a system that genuinely elevates humanity? It's a heavy question for sure, but as the investors actively shaping the future of finance, it's one we literally can no longer afford to ignore.